Okay, I think we're going to get started because we have just a short time together in these sort of speed dating virtual expos, which I just love. Thank you all for joining us and for being here today. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. The meeting is being recorded. If you have any questions for the panelists or for me, please feel free to use the Q&A function. And the chat is open for you to talk to each other. And if you have any technical issues, ask them there. But we'll be looking for the Q&A section for any questions. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jennifer Norris, and I'm the Deputy Secretary for Biodiversity and Habitat with the California Natural Resources Agency. And I lead the state's 30 by 30 initiative, which is pretty much the best job in the world, which is our commitment to conserve 30% of California's lands and coastal waters by 2030. In today's webinar, we're not going to talk in detail about 30 by 30. There's lots of information available about what we're doing, what it means to be a 30 by 30 conservation area, our strategy for achieving that. If you're interested, you can download our Pathways to 30 by 30 strategy, which is a photo shown on the screen right now, or watching the plenary session from our 30 by 30 partnership kickoff event in September. There are links being added in the chat now. And just in general, our website, there's tons of information there about what we're up to and what we've been up to. So as I said, on September 28th, we hosted an event to kick off the 30 by 30 partnership at the California Natural Resources Agency. And it was amazing, super fun, so great to see old friends and new, just from all over the state. And one of the best things about it was we included a community expo series to make expo space, to make connections among our partners, all of our agency partners, our funders, our technical assistance providers, and all of the folks who came to the event. So we had tabling, which allowed people to ask questions and learn more about all the opportunities to advance 30 by 30 across the state. And the event was filled to capacity, and we actually had to turn people away. And we know that not everyone was able to travel and join us in person. So this virtual expo series is intended to bring that experience to those throughout the state who couldn't be there with us or who still have questions and couldn't get to every table, which actually happened to me. It was so crowded, I didn't even make it to all the tables. So today I'm very excited to be joined by two of my absolute favorite people, Jen Eckerly from the Ocean Protection Council and Amy Hutzel from the State Coastal Conservancy. Jen and Amy are going to give a brief introduction of their programs and their funding opportunities and other resources that are going to help us advance 30 by 30. We're going to spend most of our time today after that addressing questions from you. The idea really for 30 by 30 is it's driven by partners with resources from the state, and we do it all together. So hearing from all the folks that can help us make this happen is really where the magic lies. So I will hand the mic over to Jen Eckerly and see you on the backside. Take it away, Jen.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's just a pleasure to be here today. And if we can advance to the next slide, I will just talk a little bit quickly for those of you who are not familiar with the Ocean Protection Council, otherwise known as OPC. We're a cabinet level state policy body that's nested within the California Natural Resources Agency. So we essentially serve as the ocean program for CNRA and as the governor's advisor on coastal and ocean issues. We have a seven-member council, and they direct policy and approve funding for priority actions, including things like research and monitoring and on-the-ground restoration projects. And you can see here our mission is bold and inspirational. We are here to help protect California's coast and ocean by advancing innovative science-based policy and management, making strategic investments, and catalyzing action through partnerships and collaboration. We have an incredibly ambitious strategic plan that takes us through 2025 with four core goals focused on addressing climate change, advancing equity, conserving biodiversity, and promoting a sustainable blue economy. And Ocean Protection Council is playing kind of a key role in very close partnership with Jen Norris in helping catalyze conserving 30% of California's coastal waters as part of our 30 by 30 initiative. Next slide, please. For those of you who did join us for the kickoff event, forgive me, you're going to hear the same thing again. But quickly here, you can see on this map, our Marine Protected Area Network, which covers 16% of state waters, is considered conserved under the definition of conserved in the Pathways document. So we have a network of 124 marine protected areas. They were created to protect the natural abundance and diversity of marine life and habitats. And they meet that definition of conserved because they provide durable protection and they're managed to sustain the integrity of marine ecosystems. And we're already seeing monitoring results are showing positive outcomes for biodiversity. The first decadal management review of the MPA network is currently underway and is scheduled to be received by the Fish and Game Commission in February of next year. And this review is going to help the state evaluate the extent to which MPAs are providing their intended ecological benefits and may result in recommendations on how we better manage our MPA network. However, prior to the completion of that review, MPA network expansion will not be a component of meeting the state's 30 by 30 marine conservation goals. But we have 16% of coastal waters protected, and we have several other strategies to get us to 30. One is focused on our national marine sanctuaries, which cover almost 41% of state waters, and were established to conserve unique natural and cultural resources. They include exceptionally high areas of biodiversity and provide conservation benefits, but they each have different regulations and policies that we need to assess to determine whether they meet the definition of conserved. So we're working with our federal partners to really understand how we can best strengthen biodiversity protections to meet our conservation goals under 30 by 30. We're also exploring options for California Native American tribes to establish indigenous marine stewardship areas that support and enhance tribal stewardship of coastal and marine ecosystems. We recognize that tribally led conservation is key to the state's 30 by 30 effort. And then we're also looking at other effective conservation measures. So our coastal waters have places that, such as de facto marine protected areas that restrict human activity for reasons other than conservation, or existing closures for the purposes of fisheries management. And these places may have the potential to contribute to the state's 30 by 30 goal, but their durability and biodiversity benefits are going to require some further study. Next slide, please. So where is OPC in all of this? As I mentioned, we're helping lead the effort in coastal waters, and because the coast and ocean is a public trust resource and belongs to all of us, implementation looks a little bit different, as Jen says, on the salty side versus on the land side. And so in order to maximize collaboration and transparency, OPC has a seat, as you'll see here on this Venn diagram, on the 30 by 30 coordinating committee. And we're serving as the entity for facilitating discussions among tribes and fishermen, NGOs, state and federal agency partners, and others. We're helping to lead that implementation roadmap for how we're going to achieve 30% conserved in our coastal waters. Next slide. And really quickly, we're going to be doing this by working very closely with our sister state agencies. We're going to lead tribal consultations and listening sessions to ensure the voices of tribes are elevated and prioritized in implementation. And we're establishing opportunities for stakeholder input and discussion to really understand environmental justice, conservation, access, fishing, and federal agency perspectives. We're also focusing on investing in key research needs to identify areas that should be prioritized for strengthened biodiversity protections and strategies for strengthening those protections, like restoring or degrading restoration of degraded habitats. And we also recognize the need to continue investment in monitoring and evaluation to track progress in meeting our goals. Next slide, please. So the reason you are all here today is to understand, where the various funding sources are across the state to advance this work. So right now, the Ocean Protection Council has about $230 million in our funding portfolio, and that's to advance all of our strategic priorities that I mentioned earlier. So where that overlaps and has a nexus with 30 by 30 are around priorities for sea level rise vulnerability assessments, adaptation planning and resilience projects, habitat restoration and protection, research and monitoring, and land acquisition and land return. Next slide, please. And so for next steps, I'm really happy to announce that on November 30th from 12 to 1, we're going to be hosting a roundtable discussion. And so this is really to, again, kind of do an overview of what I just shared about the state's approach for how we're going to conserve 30% of coastal waters, and really solicit feedback and recommendations on how we implement those approaches, and also how we can best engage and interact with partners who want to help us on the implementation piece. After that webinar or roundtable discussion, we want to have focused topical discussions to really do a deep dive into our specific approaches, focused on sanctuaries and those other effective conservation measures. We need to prioritize our priority science needs and then start funding those projects. And we are going to begin initiating listening sessions and tribal consultations to solicit feedback from tribes as well. And I think with that, I will close. Thank you so much for the time, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you, Jen. That is perfect. You do play such an important role in us getting to 30% for the state. Let's turn it over to Amy Hutzel, another one of my favorite people, who's got all kinds of resources to help us advance conservation on the coast.
Great, thank you. And Jen are two of my favorite people, so it's great to be on this webinar with the two of them. I'm representing the State Coastal Conservancy. Our vision is of a beautiful, restored, and accessible coast for current and future generations of Californians. And we act with others. That is all of you and more out there. We don't do any of our work alone. And the Conservancy works along the coast in the entirety of the 9 San Francisco Bay Area counties and in coastal watersheds. So it's a fairly large jurisdiction. Next slide. So we are in the process of finalizing our strategic plan for the next 5 years. Board adoption is anticipated on December 1st at our board meeting. And I want to thank everyone who submitted comments or participated in meetings over the past year to develop this strategic plan. The plan lays out our vision, goals, and measurable objectives, which we'll be reporting on annually to the board. The plan was developed in the context of 3 major drivers, and I'll be touching on these 3 more in the next couple slides, but it's addressing inequities, the climate crisis, and funding, which fortunately is matching the urgency of the moment, and more in a couple slides on Conservancy funds, but we are in a really exciting position in terms of being able to implement many of our goals. The key strategies for implementation of our strategic plan include implementing existing state and regional plans. And that includes, really importantly, the pathways to 30 by 30. Another strategy is accelerating action. We recognize we are in a climate crisis now. We have limited time to act. So we want to move forward projects, particularly projects that have been in the planning stages for years, if not decades. This is our opportunity to do that. And then another strategy is building capacity and investing in meaningful engagement. So supporting community-based groups and leading or engaging on projects. Next slide. And the strategic plan, it's divided into 5 goals. The first is prioritizing equity. And I would point out many of these goals overlap with each other. So individual projects may fit in many of the different goal areas. So in terms of prioritize equity, objectives include that at least 40% of our funding will benefit systemically excluded communities. And the definition for that is in the strategic plan. I would read it, but it's long and I've got like 5 minutes. Another objective is returning power to tribes, supporting systemically excluded communities through community engagement and technical assistance, and incorporating workforce development in our projects. Goal 2 is enjoy the coast, which includes our Explore the Coast program grants, which are outdoor education programs and more than outdoor education. It's about bringing joy to people with opportunities to visit the coast. Our Coastal Stories program, which is related to Explore the Coast, but really is allowing for other stories, less known stories about the coast that represent the diversity of people in California to be shared. Third objective is expanding accessibility for people with disabilities, building trails like the Coastal Trail, Bay Trail, Ridge Trail, and recreational facilities and amenities, enhancing piers and waterfronts, and our Explore the Coast overnight program, which is lower cost overnight accommodations such as campgrounds and hostels. Goal 3 is protect and restore the coast, which includes conserving land through fee title acquisition or easements, restoring or enhancing habitats such as wetlands, protecting and enhancing working lands like our ranch lands and farmlands, and cutting green tape. I'm sure Jen enjoys hearing that. We put cutting green tape into our strategic plan to move our restoration work forward expeditiously. Goal 4 is our climate ready work, which includes sea level rise adaptation projects, wildfire resilience projects, and other multi-benefit nature-based climate adaptation. And finally, goal 5 is organizational goals, which include supporting our staff and transparency about our work. Next slide. So as I mentioned, there's significant funding this year for our work, $700 million in this year's budget for the Conservancy, a really significant commitment to coastal resilience. Half of that is for climate resilience, fairly broadly defined. 160 million is for sea level rise resilience, with 120 million of that 160 for nature-based sea level rise resilience. And the remainder is focused on ports, waterfronts, and ecosystems. 50 million for acquisitions. And I would point out, we could also fund acquisitions through the 2 other larger pots of funding. 10 million for wildfire resilience, and then 100 million for specific priority geographies or projects, such as the Santa Ana River, Santa Monica Bay, the Eel and Russian rivers, and several specific projects. Next slide. This takes a little time in between slides. I get to breathe. So our application process, we are accepting applications on an ongoing basis, starting now, or actually before now. So you can apply at any time, and we will review, evaluate applications as they are received. It's generally a 2-step process to apply, but if you want, you can request a technical assistance consultation with the regional manager covering your project area to discuss basic project eligibility. That can just, it could be as simple as an email to the regional manager just to check. And that can be beneficial and could save you some time in terms of submitting a pre-proposal just to make sure your project is a fit with the Conservancy strategic plan and our funding priorities. The next step is a pre-proposal. The pre-application is reviewed by the regional manager and staff at the Conservancy, and they'll reply within 60 days. And if a pre-application meets our eligibility criteria and there's available Conservancy funding for the project, and it's a good fit with our strategic plan, then applicants will be invited to submit a full proposal. And then again, our staff will respond within 60 days on whether a grant award will be recommended to our board. And our board meets 5 times a year, and we take projects to them. They have to authorize all grants. So we evaluate applications based on the project selection criteria, and that criteria, our draft strategic plan, grant application materials, and a recorded webinar that's a bit longer than this spiel that we did last week is also up there. And we maxed out our Zoom at 300 people with that webinar last week. So that was really exciting for us that we were able to reach a lot of new potential partners. And I just want to point out on this slide, there's a list of our regional managers. Their contact information is on our website. And at the bottom is the webpage for our grants information, which I think was also put into the chat. So with that, I think that's my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And let's get Jen back on. There she is. Hello, friends. So thank you both. Very exciting to do this work with you on 30 by 30. We have a lot to do, but we have a lot of good resources. So Amy, your solicitation's open and rolling is what I took out of that. Jen, I saw you were answering questions in the Q&A, but maybe clarify sort of where you are in the process and maybe how people interact with OPC to get access to funding when that time comes.
Depending on our funding source, we have various ways which we can either do a competitive process where we would issue solicitation, or we can do discretionary projects based on a priority funding need. So it's kind of all of the above. I will say that, we're working really closely with Amy and her team to find places and opportunities where we can leverage these funds and really get, maximize the impact and the way that we can spend our money. There's some overlap, but then there's some separation there. So looking for that partnership and that opportunity with the Conservancy. We will post all notification of solicitations on our website and through our social media channels and our listserv. So just keep an eye out for that. And we're in the process now of figuring out kind of what our strategic investments for next year will look like. But I think there's certainly going to be priorities around sea level rise adaptation and coastal resilience and habitat restoration.
And I would say too that, the 30 by 30 partnership has a huge listserv and we're getting our machine going. So when opportunities arise, if there are new things you want us to push out, we can also do that through our list, but we'll make sure the OPC information gets amplified because there is an incredible amount of opportunity and we do want to move it. I liked what you said about leveraging. Amy, I think you're doing the same too, right? Talking to the Wildlife Conservation Board also. Those are the 3 big pots that I see is Coastal Conservancy, Wildlife Conservation Board, and OPC have sort of these big chunks of money, but they don't all do the same thing, right? So can you say more about thoughts on how to make that work more efficiently for our partners, Amy?
Yeah, I mean, we have a long history of working closely with the Wildlife Conservation Board, with Ocean Protection Council, and with other state agencies, Department of Fish and Wildlife, state parks, the other conservancies. I know you've had a few of the other conservancies on here. Yeah. So frequently we will jointly fund projects, particularly large projects where you need to assemble a lot of funding, or projects that we are leading and facilitating. Many of these projects take, years, if not decades, to move forward. And some acquisitions are extremely large and need pulling of funds. But we also recognize that having grants from 3 or 4 different state agencies can be a little inefficient. So we talk amongst ourselves in terms of what fits best. Jen Eckerly, you got to keep the Jens apart, was talking about the Venn diagrams of our work, and where it's clear that, it's in another agency's purview, we will direct grant applicants or partners to other agencies. And, and we also talk amongst ourselves about, okay, this acquisition makes more sense for the Conservancy, this more so for the Wildlife Conservation Board. And I realized I didn't say Explore the Coast and Coastal Stories. That is an annual RFP. So if you have an Explore the Coast or Coastal Stories project, wait for the annual RFP, but the rest is ongoing.
That's really helpful. And I want to shout out to the cutting green tape nature of the way we're all thinking about pushing this money out the door. I've been hearing it from many folks that not only are we talking to each other behind the scenes, but also trying to be more transparent with our partners about which kinds of projects fits where, making them do less of the guesswork and helping them more with, if people bring projects to any of us in state agencies, we can help them figure out where they need to go, because there's so much collaboration behind the scenes, which I think is really valuable, particularly for organizations that might not have experience applying for funds, and maybe this is their first time, which is a big part of what we're trying to do with 30 by 30 is bring all kinds of new partners into the fold and help them help us achieve these bigger goals. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I want to see if there's anything else in the Q&A that is relevant to this. There are several questions about just how we're doing 30 by 30, and I just want to remind folks that we have a whole document, bunch of webinars, bunch of information on the website about that. That conversation will be ongoing. Jen, did you want to jump in and say something?
I just wanted to flag, there was a question in the Q&A about details on the roundtable, and I just wanted to flag that the information hot off the presses is in the chat, the links in the chat.
Awesome, great. Okay, so takeaway message here, we have lots of opportunities on the coast and ocean to advance 30 by 30, lots of resources. Any last thoughts from you, Amy or Jen, on how folks can engage with you before I close this out?
I would say reach out to us. Our staff are really wonderful, our regional managers and the project staff, and they want to see great projects move forward in each of their regions. So reaching out to them, and we are, we give grants, but we also provide assistance and engage in projects. And, we want to see demonstrable results for the people of California on the coast.
That's right. We want to show success. We got an amazing injection of funds, and we want to show results and show what good work we can all do together. So thank you. Before I close it out, just want to thank everybody who tuned in. Remind you that this was recorded. We will post the recording on our website in a day or two. I think we've got a list of the remaining, if Jason can pull up the last slide, so let's take a second. Last bit. Okay, just a reminder, this is how you can get in touch with OPC and Coastal Conservancy, and don't forget to visit californianature.ca.gov for all that information about 30 by 30. And then last slide is these are the last three in the Expo series, and then all the others, as we said, they're posted on our website, the taped interactions. So thank you all for being here. Thank both of you for your time, and have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.